Hey, Jimmy, who's that in the count? Who's behind the counter in the kitchen making the popcorn? Is that the guy you used to work with?
I don't. Like, first of all, let's get one thing straight.
Yeah.
The popcorn counter does not have a kitchen. It has a machine.
But they're making
a machine.
gourmet.
It has a fairly poorly maintained and smelly machine, which is rarely clean, which makes the popcorn.
But this is a
I don't think
gourmet.
this place has a kitchen. I know, because I used to work in a kitchen. That was like my first job. I think we talked about this when we talked about Ratatouille. So like my first job, and I learned so much from this job after I left school. I worked as a waiter for like a few months. Kind of gathering some money to go traveling, and it was like kind of like my introduction to adult life. The guy who was the chef at the steakhouse where I worked was like a trans man, so he had been gender assigned female at birth, and then he was kind of like transitioning to become a man. And I remember at the time the guy who was like the front of house manager, who was dating the woman who was like the head waitress at the restaurant. He was like this incredible sexist cliche. How I think he was so full of his own virility that he could not go 15 seconds without making a dick joke.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. Really, I mean, so he would look at like a ketchup container or a salt cellar or, a fork or anything like that, and it figures some way to make a penis joke out of it. It was endlessly making sexist jokes and, and telling everybody who wanted to hear and everybody who didn't want to hear about his riotous sex life with the head waitress. But I remember when I started at the job, he said, "Oh yeah, I won't say his name, but the guy who is the head chef, just treat him as a man. He's becoming a man. Just call him a man. He's a man." And this guy who was like, in all other senses, like a sexist dinosaur with gags from the 1970s, was completely cool. And you had absolutely no issue, and neither did any of the other staff with the guy who was the head chef.
Wow.
And this was like the late 80s.
Yeah.
It was kind of not an issue. People weren't kind of prejudiced or making gags or saying, "Oh, that's weird." It was completely not a thing. And how can it be 2023 now, and somehow that now is a thing? It just makes me kind of despair of humanity a little bit. I learned a lot on that job. I learned a lot in the cinema as well.
Ooh.
So like, it's kind of LGBTQ characters who turn up in movies, are part of what's educating and changing society. Yeah, I guess. Do you think?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of social change comes on the big screen and the small screen to a certain extent. So
yeah, the small screen is in your house, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. The people on TV are people you invite into your home. So in a way, that affects even more social change.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and we've talked about, we do the Who Am I segment. People need to see themselves on screen, but I think we also need to be exposed to people who are not like ourselves on screen too.
So we can find out that they are really like ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, like, Brokeback Mountain is quite a landmark because you'd never seen, as far as I know, gay cowboys on the big screen. I think there are undercurrents of that probably in some of the old films, but really not. And then, did we talk about The Power of the Dog last year? I don't think we watched.
No, I don't think we did. I have not seen that, actually.
Which I think some of the old school cowboys were offended by that because the cowboys are swimming naked together in this stream, and they're masculine cowboys that the American West really lauds, I guess. So I think that film was tremendous because we'd never seen that. I don't think we'd ever seen two men making love on screen before.
Yeah, I guess not in a mainstream film with above the line name actors. Yeah. Absolutely.
That was I think it was certainly a groundbreaker or a ceiling shattering film, something like that.
I do find that film, Brokeback Mountain, tremendously romantic. I think it's a fantastic date film.
Yeah.
Because there's just something so kind of so romantic about this kind of this doomed love and their longing and the way that they sort of love from afar and sort of don't speak about it. I think it's just, very romantic.
Mm-hmm.
Really beautiful film.
What else comes to mind for you?
I know we were talking about watching films on a plane. Last time I was on a plane, before this time round, I did watch Carol, which is the Todd Haynes films based on a Patricia Highsmith novel.
Okay.
Kate Blanchett. Is that how you pronounce her name?
Blanchett. That's how. Yeah, that's
Blanchett.
Blanchett.
Blanchett. And Rooney Mara. Yeah, in that, which is like, a kind of love story between two women. Oh. And I remember very little about the story. And again, maybe that's due to the amount of oxygen that I was breathing during the trip. But I do remember it being kind of quite seductive, though. And there's something, tremendously, seductive about Kate Blanchett's character in that. And it's, it's enough of a landmark to see two male stars playing gay characters. I think to see two female stars playing gay characters is, another step further, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, definitely.
But a little bit like Mulholland Drive. Yeah, when we watched Boys Don't Cry last week, and that has quite a lot of driving scenes in it, which really remind me of David Lynch somehow, to the extent that I wonder whether there may be some library footage of like the road speeding by in Boys Don't Cry that I think may also appear in Lost Highway. It felt really quite Lynchian. I don't know whether it's because of the film stock or the lenses or just the way that films were being lit in during that kind of period. But there's something quite Lynchian about Boys Don't Cry, and Mulholland Drive is another film that features that kind of two gay women or women having a gay relationship. I knew we were going to talk about this, so I looked it up, and I discovered something that I never knew. Did you know this? So Naomi Watts and Laura Haring, the two kind of characters in Mulholland Drive. I never knew that Laura Haring, and please write in if I'm pronouncing it wrong, is also known as Countess von Bismark. Apparently, like in the mid 80s, something like that. For 2 years, she was married to the Count von Bismarck, and now she is still known as the Countess von Bismarck.
I think you've pronounced von Bismarck perfectly.
So at least I got that part of her name right.
Herring, I don't know. Herring or Haring? Yeah.
Herring is, maybe it's Herring. Oh no. That's it. She won't be inviting me around for tea with the Count. But there's my movie trivia for the week.
Okay. Wow. Couple films I want to bring up are... I'll start with Moonlight. Did you say Moonlight a few years ago, which I think won a Best?
Oh, no, I did not. No.
That's a really wonderful example because it's sort of... the structure is really basic in the sense that it covers a young man's life when he's very young, probably 10 or something like that. So starting to, his sexuality is starting to emerge, I guess, and then high school and then adulthood. And the passage of being accepted as accepting himself and being accepted by others as a gay black man, just great. It's really well done. It's super subtle. I mean, not an action film, nothing super intense, but just very real moments in a very difficult struggle to sort of just come to terms with oneself and hope that others accept you. So that I thought was great.
It did win the Oscar, didn't it? Is that right?
I think that was the year that La La Land was announced or something like that, and then they looked at
Warren Beatty got it wrong, wasn't it?
Actually read the card, and it was not La La Land, but Moonlight. And I saw both films, and Moonlight is a good film. It's a best film, whereas La La Land, maybe not. I think we should bring up our old friend Pedro Almodovar a little bit because he does gay characters wonderfully. He does trans characters wonderfully. So I mean, he's made a career in part on finally bringing those characters to screen and making them likable and normalizing them. And I think he's just a hero in that way. So I think he's well beyond us. And he's been doing that for 40 years now at this point, I think. So he's had a long career of really interesting characters too. I mean, obviously sort of sometimes they're played up a little bit, maybe they're over the top, but some wonderful characters in films like even All About My Mother, which we watched, or Bad Education. One of my favorites, though, is something that I saw as a kid. I may have seen it shortly after it came out, which is Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino. And it's a Sidney Lumet film. It's a fantastic film. And it's a guy who's robbing a bank. He's doing this sort of masculine thing, and it's revealed slowly. He's on the phone with his lover, and we learn eventually that his lover is a man, and then that it's a man who is seeking to make a transition from man to a woman. And I think it's played by Chris Sarandon is the actor. So it sort of comes out late in the film. You're watching this sort of, like this heist film, this bank robbery in progress, but then you get this piece of information. It just slowly drips out a little bit about him that is totally unexpected, and I liked that a lot. I think it's subtle. I think it's realistic, and just sort of counters our intuitions, I think, a little bit. So I thought that was a great film, and that's almost 50 years ago. Good, 1975. Yeah.
For the longest time, the conventional notion was that if you were an actor hoping for a big career, then playing a gay character was career suicide, that you wouldn't get cast if you played a gay character, and that the big leading men would try and shy away from that. And I was having a look down at some of the films that I've written in my list here.
Yeah.
One of them is My Beautiful Laundrette, Stephen Frears picture. Have you seen that?
That was on my list as well. Yeah, good
right.
choice.
So, and that was like the second film, or maybe even the first film to star Daniel Day-Lewis. And it turns out he kind of had an okay career after that.
Yeah,
funny
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other one which really stands out on my list here is My Own Private Idaho.
Yep, I had that on my list too.
Man, there we go. So, which is Gus Van Sant. But the leads in there are River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, exactly.
Keanu Reeves, cannot stop selling tickets for John Wick.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to know what career River Phoenix would have today if he was still alive.
Yeah, sure.
These were not films which seemed to hinder the career of the actors who appeared in them.
Yeah,
I don't know whether people still get this notion, or whether these days, people think a little bit more progressively.
I think we do, but there's also there's been some backlash. Like, if you've got a gay character, just get a gay actor as well.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that out there, and I understand that. It makes perfectly good sense to me. But there's this other angle that actors like to stretch their wings out a little bit, right, and do something that's not just their own character, sort of to escape stereotyping, I guess, or are the words? Not stereotyping. Typecasting.
Typecasting.
To avoid typecasting, they would take on a part that's completely different to their own personality. So I think, it was probably, like an actor's challenge to play a gay character at times. And I think, to a certain extent, I'm sure a lot of gay actors were blacklisted, or they were very secret. Rock Hudson comes to mind, right? These people who played very masculine characters in response to being, or in response to trying to avoid being typecast or maybe even outed.
And I wonder whether we'll end up with a Tropic Thunder kind of situation where, in the same way that Robert Downey Jr.'s character puts on makeup to play a black character, because that's like the ultimate acting.
Yeah.
And the way that we look back on that now, I wonder whether in a few years' time, the notion that a straight actor should be playing a gay character will look a bit off color, frankly, and not entirely appropriate.
I think we probably are headed that way. There's a little progress. But still, no kitchens.
No kitchen. I was kind of remembered. I kind of forgot about this. So the one TV project that I've written that actually kind of got off the ground and got made was Rommel and Juggle, which is and we pitched it originally as a gay Indian Romeo and Juliet. In fact, it was one of those projects that had a 3-word pitch, which was Romeo and Julian. And it was produced in 2017. So I wrote it with Anu, who's the director that I was doing a lot of work with back then. MTV India at the time were kind of looking for edgy, sort of youthy scripts.
Wow.
So Anu pitched it to them. I don't think they went for it, but in the end, we pitched it as like a sort of a trilogy. There were going to be 3 Shakespeare adaptations that turned things completely on their head. So there was Rommel and Juggle, which was like Romeo and Juliet, but with 2 men, and then there was a reworking of Othello that was set in 2 rival Indian restaurants. And then I think we had kind of like like a vague pitch for a Hamlet-y type idea that never really came to anything. And the only one which actually ended up selling was Rommel and Juggle. So it was sold to a producer, and then like 2 years later, the rights reverted to us. This is such a great thing when this happens. So the rights reverted to us, and we sold it again. The only project I think that we've actually sold twice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Got paid for twice. Didn't get paid very much money either time, but got paid something. And it ended up becoming a 10-part web series.
Oh.
And there are 5 episodes that you can see for free online, and then 5 where you had to subscribe up to the like the Balaji online subscription.
Okay.
And I don't think it did kind of great guns, but it's still out there. Actually, it still exists. And we had a little bit of controversy, I think, because at the time when we, like just after we sold it, I think there was a repealing of the law that made homosexuality illegal in India, and then there was a big backlash, and they repealed the repeal, so it then briefly became illegal to be gay again in India for a short while, and then they kind of repealed it, I think. Which was disastrous and confusing news for LGBTQ people in India, but at least it gave us a little bit of heat while we were trying to flog our script, and that's the thing that matters. So in the end, that ended up being a slightly controversial, not bad project.
Wow.
And this is kind of slightly irrelevant to the LGBTQ theme, but the most fun aspect of that script I can still now clearly remember writing episode 2, and we got to the bottom of the first page and wrote something like, "There is a song and dance number." And then just kind of like never went on. I'd never kind of put any more elaboration in. And then when I eventually got to watch like the finished show that they made, they've taken our suggestion, "There is a song and dance number," and done like a 2-minute song with dancing and 40 dancers and choreography and
wow.
Just so awesome. Oh, that little thing was just like an afterthought. We didn't really take it very seriously. And look, someone's made a whole 2-minute song out of that.
Did Anu direct any of those, or
no? She did not. So she just wrote.
Okay.
So we just wrote it together.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. It's funny when you work on a project for a while, you kind of get quite attached to it. And so I think by the time we got to the end of the script, she was thinking, "Oh, actually, these are quite fun. I quite like to be involved, but you can only do so much." And she's a busy woman.
Yeah. Huh.
So that's my tiny contribution.
It sounds great. Everyone, our listeners should look for it on the YouTube.
Actually, it is on YouTube. Look for Rommel and Juggle. I haven't looked at it for a while. I think you'll see my name in tiny letters during the opening credits at some point.
But do you have writing credits on any of them, or is it like story?
Yeah, I do get writing credits on every episode, I think. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I think we did end up writing all of the episodes ourselves. So, for what it's worth.
Well done.
That's part of the reason why my career is at its towering peak as it is today. we should get the popcorn. Let's get the popcorn. That's enough self-promotion for one blooming episode. Let's eat that popcorn again.
Yeah, let's have some popcorn.